good morning, and welcome to the Tobago Update Morning Show. Yes, and I have in studio with me my co-host, my new co-host, Lavian Cupid. Good morning.
Good morning, Akinlabi
Yes,
again.
it's nice to
Pleasure to
have you
be
in
here,
studio
filling
with
in for the
us.
lovely Adana this morning. Good
Yes,
morning,
yes, yes.
Adana.
So we have on the line with us, ladies and gentlemen, Pastor Clive Dottin, who is the former commissioner of who's a former member, sorry, of the Police Service Commission, and he's here to give his views on drinking, gambling, and the marijuana use age increase announced proposal increased proposal, sorry, announced by the Prime Minister, the Honorable Kamala Prasad Bisesa. Good morning and welcome, sir.
Good morning. It's a privilege to be here. I have to use my phone this morning because my computer. I'm in America right now,
Okay.
in St. Louis, Missouri, attending a massive global leadership conference, which happens once every 5 years for the church. So I'm happy to be on your program this morning.
Miss Pastor Dutton, you said praise God for the age increase. So just expound on that and tell us your thoughts on the Prime Minister's proposal.
Well, I, when the government and the opposition, but there was a reverse. When the PNM was in power, the present government was in opposition. I had criticized both of them when they decriminalized the issue of marijuana. And to be fair to Fitzgerald Hines, I took part in a symposium. I was also out of the country. And he said you'll have to revisit that because of the challenges that you have. Let me just go a little deeper into this. As you know, we have a rehab center, the church. I'm chairman of the board at this issue of uh, folks addicted to marijuana. So they spend 6 months at the rehab center so that I'm privileged to have certain information. And I am fighting this war against drugs over 40 years. And what happened when you decriminalized it was that the turfs became smaller. All right, that's the first thing that happened. And you had more people, new people, into the drug dealing or drug pushing or drug distribution business. So that's the geopolitics, if I should say that, of the turf wars. And that increased your murder rate. Okay? And then you had a lot of young people, all right, had access to it that didn't previously have access to it. So you had a compound problem, all right, that didn't help with the level of criminality in the country. So when I heard her, all right, the report on, I think, the Monday night program that they have restarted, the UNC, so to speak, have restarted. And I heard the issue of the gambling and the age, for alcohol and especially for marijuana. No, I would not have minded if the whole, I mean, it was banned completely. But that, when you have to face reality, that will not happen. However, raising the age to 25, particularly for marijuana. Now, alcohol is one of the most dangerous drugs in the world. Let us not get away from that. One of the most dangerous drugs and frequently used. When I study how alcohol is consumed at Christmas time, I say, how paradoxical that takes place, and alcohol is destroying several lives, several families. There's still abuse, there's still strokes, there's still paralysis, there's still brain damage. All of that is it's with alcohol. Cirrhosis of the liver. I had an uncle who was a chronic drinker, so I know about that firsthand. And don't talk about gambling in the schools, gambling dens in the schools, and the issue of even cocaine distribution. But the marijuana has some devastating effects that people are not aware of. Now, I want to say about marijuana that I mentioned in my note on my interview with the Newsday. The issue of marijuana impact on the brain. A lot of people, and I want to warn the government. Not only do you have to raise the age limit, but there has to be a tremendously consistent program of education in the schools of the country. Because although you raise the age limit there to 25, you really don't want any more young people using it whatsoever. All right? You just don't want that.
Pastor Dottin,
Yes.
just jumping in here on a point that you were just alluding to when you talked about psychological. You mentioned something in your article about the AIM Motivational Syndrome. Could you expound on that a bit for me?
Thank you. Yes. Yeah, let me expand on that, and I am happy to. Now, to be honest with you, even about 10 years into my fight against marijuana, that's about 30 years ago, those of us who never wanted it to be smoked, and the liberals, both of us agreed on one point, that it decreases your ability to be motivated, to have a dream, to have a vision. And hello, God has people everywhere. I don't feel only Seventh-day Adventists will be saved. I think God has good people in every religion, every race, Christian, non-Christian. I feel that way. And it's amazing that a girl from associate professor, all right, of addictionology in Harvard University, the Center for Addiction, and her name is Dr. Jody Gilman. She has been receiving a lot of hate mail. Why is she receiving hate mail? Well, I'll tell you why she's receiving hate mail. Because she came up with a research and she published it 5 years ago. That's relatively recent when coming to research. And she published that the nucleus accumbens in the cerebral cortex, the nucleus accumbens that deals with vision, motivation, and learning is damaged by marijuana. From the time she released that, you know, they say men love darkness rather than light because their deeds are evil. You know what happened to her? She received a lot of hate mail and death threats because she published her research findings.
And
Dr.
that's so
Jody
unfortunate.
Gilman.
That's so unfortunate.
Yes,
But
it's
also, if
exceptionally
I go back a
unfortunate.
bit, if I go back a bit to your opening statement, you spoke about the Rehab Center, and your Rehab Center. Could you just tell me where in Trinidad it is located? But also, I want you to tell me, if you can, and if you do have the stats, what is the youngest age group, and for what substances you see coming into your Rehab Center, and how successful are these individuals after the program, and what is probably the recidivism rate? How many times do you see them coming back into the center, or that you see them back out on the streets? So could you give me some stats on that?
Now, globally, for cocaine, the recidivism rate is 80% when it comes to cocaine. Thank God in our center, um, it's what I would call half and half, 50-50. So we have had, and I believe it was because of a strong spiritual component. Let me say this to you. I have parents. Now, we don't take young people below the age of 15, right? We don't take them, all right? Because you have some senior men in the program, and it's an all-male program. We do our outreach for females, but we don't have any. It is strictly a male program. Now, so the recidivism rate, all right, is heavy globally. I want to mention that, and it's no different in Trinidad. Now, for success to take place after the 6 months, all right, we have an outpatient program where we visit these young people. We keep in touch with their parents by phone. We started a program that is an internationally acknowledged program, post recovery, and it's called FIT, which is family intervention therapy. The family intervention therapy centers around the MIP. So you have the PIT and you have the MIP. This is an internationally approved program where you discover who is the most important person in the life of the addict, all right? And that person plays a critical role, and it takes 4 sessions with the family. You meet with the MIP, the most important person. You meet with the family minus the addicts. So you meet with the family and the MIP, all right? And then after that, you integrate. You have a program we call reintegration into the family, where you have therapy sessions with the family and the addict. Okay, so we utilize that program called Fit Family Intervention Therapy, so that what I was told by addicts in the center, and I was told by one of their managers, Brother Keith Stewart, who used drugs, marijuana and cocaine for 30 years. And he was telling me, once you decriminalize that, you're going to see an explosion, an exponential explosion when it comes to the issue of marijuana use. And that's exactly what you have, because when you have parents coming to you telling you about their 12-year-old and their 13-year-old using the marijuana because of the. I went to a home at the top of the hill in
Pastor,
Lopino, and they were
Pastor,
growing it.
Pastor Dottin, as you
Yes.
mentioned, an explosion in the use of marijuana. I know one of the motivations behind the decriminalization would have been to ease up the court system and perhaps the work of the police, the burden on the police service.
Ay,
With,
ay,
with,
ay.
with, with this increase in the age limit, what do you think would be the effect on the police service and the court system as well? And do you think that we have that capacity within our police service and court system to do that rigorous amount of enforcement that you're calling for?
Well, as you notice, when I made this statement, I made an original statement, which I haven't posted on Facebook yet. And then I had the interview with news. So the enforcement is going to be a challenge. I want to tell you that. The enforcement is going to be a challenge there, because at this point in time, they're going to have to appoint a special unit to deal with the issue of enforcement, also a special unit to head out to the schools, because you have a lot of young people using, and they would feel that since enforcement is always a problem, they are going to get away. So they will keep using. And remember, addiction is not an easy thing to suddenly, it's just not legislation. It will call for parental supervision, it will call for alertness by this particular force unit in the police service. Particularly, they're going to have to call upon the prison ministry, all right, the juvenile prison officers to be alert to, all right, so that it will call for the entire city to rally around this to make it a what I call a productive possibility. So
Pastor,
there's going to be a challenge there.
Pastor Dottin,
I could admit.
yeah, so we had on Mr. Gary Griffith, Captain Gary Griffith, yesterday morning, and he spoke to the fact that
Yes,
when he tried to enforce the age limit when he was 18 years old, he got a lot of pushback from the police officers under
he did.
him.
He did.
So
Sure.
as a former commissioner, do you think that there is that kind of motivation within the TTPS to really want to enforce this age limit?
Well, I listened to the new commissioner of police, and I like how he sounds. When he was first appointed, now he was out in the blue. I never expected him to be. I didn't even know about him, to be frank with you. But he will have to be firm, all right, and enforce significant amount of discipline, because part of the problem with your police service happens to be the corrupt rogue elements. All right, that's number one. Who might stoops when they hear about the law and say nobody could take on that. All right, so you have the rogue element in the police service to deal with, and then you have the issue of division. All right, among the ranks, that he will have to unite that service behind this Mount Everest, because it's a Mount Everest, and he has to make sure, all right, that the supervisors under him, the first division officers, the deputy commissioners, the assistant commissioners of police, the inspectors and the sergeants, particularly, all right, are positive, are motivated, are stimulated to make this thing a reality, because too many of our young people vaping and smoking ganja from as young as 11 and 10 and 9. That is what you have right now. Okay, so this is a first step in trying to curb this disease of addiction. especially among our under 15 group, which, let me tell you something. I mean, I don't want to sound alarmist, but that's a major problem that you have. The pushback that Gary spoke about, former Commissioner Griffith, yes, there was the pushback, and there'll be a pushback against that. You have people already saying, don't worry them. But I'm glad certain organizations like the chambers and what have you have stated their support for this initiative, and even some political analysts, all right, and even some people in the medical circle who have to grapple with young people, and the clinical psychologists and psychiatrists who are seeing up in their face firsthand what is taking place here with this. And they have given support to this bill.
And on the topic of enforcement, continuing along this topic, Pastor, what do you think, in your opinion, would be the right measures for the youth? Would it be community service, a fine, prison time? What are you thinking?
All right, let me go back to something you raised, both of you raised in the first part of this interview. Now, the population, I'm sorry to say this, but the population was fooled into believing that when you decriminalize it, hundreds of people would leave the prison. That has not happened and will not happen, and I'll tell you why. All you have done, I mean, the DPP, all right, Brother Roger Gaspard, I believe his heart is in the right place, but all you did was put a lot of pressure on him, because actually, just by the passing of a bill, it means people just come out of the jail by scores. So I am saying, for the very young ones, a ticket, a fine, you understand, will be the way forward. I feel that is the way forward. I have always believed you didn't have to jail people for two joints, if you understand where I'm coming from. So that you have to be wise in the framing of the bill. And I think generally, I think they're looking at the British model and the other model, all right, the very liberal model in Holland, and see what some of the states in America are doing. But with all of the new government looking at the various models internationally, there must be consequences when people are found doing this. Now, let's go to alcohol, if you don't mind. The bar owners will have to be held accountable, because the point is, young people just going to walk into a bar and say, "Hey, look my ID, look my age, look my birth certificate." Bar owners will have to use their discretion in this, because young people sometimes look older than they really are. Okay, so I want to mention this. So all of that comes into the fray. But I want to tell bar owners, the issue of young people coming in and you ignoring the law, there has to be consequences for you too. And there must be consequences for drug dealers who continue to sell marijuana to minors. All right? And I talk about folks under 18 and what have you there. So everybody, bar owners, all right, drug dealers, teachers in schools, especially secondary schools. And this guy, this talk poet, all right, Sandy, talks a lot about the infiltration of drugs in the primary school. In fact, he has a whole poem on that. And we have had private conversations on this. So this is not just a secondary school infiltration by the drug dealers in the community, but
So,
primary school infiltration.
so
The
Pastor
father came to
Dutton,
me from Central. Hello?
I know we could talk for hours, 2, 3,
Oh,
4 hours going on here,
yes,
but
yes.
we have to wrap up the interview. But before, I want to ask you one final question. You've spoken
Yes.
ad nauseum about the addiction crisis that we're facing with our young people. And the law is just our first part, like you mentioned. What do you think, in terms of a holistic strategy, we could employ to really tackle this problem and bring it under control? Do you think that an interagency task force with various ministries and agencies coming together to come up with one national policy is the best way forward?
I think that's the best way forward. And I was leaving that to be my last bouncer. You asked Yorker, the issue of an interagency task force, all right, within the police service primarily, because they will have the majority of the responsibility. So you need to have that one. Then you need to have an interministerial task force, and I'll tell you who: youth, health, and education, and national security. Well, they have homeland security. Those four ministries must come together to make a difference. The other thing is there are two major programs internationally for schools in terms of drug prevention. One is Youth to Youth, and the other is Youth Alive. So I would ask the government to research and look at those two models of prevention, because you see, along with the legislation, you have to have a strong drug prevention program. That is what you have to have. In California, they have a model what they call it retirees model for prevention. All right, and the police have a program called DARE. So that those programs must be carefully researched. All right, one size doesn't fit all. So you need to have all these programs coming together. You need to have the drug prevention conferences in the schools. All of that, must take place. Apart from the interministerial task force, apart from the issue of the interagency task force, you need to have a core of volunteers who will flood the schools and give the young people the motivation to remain drug free. A lot of young people, the younger they use, the research is showing the harder it is to come off of this stuff. That goes for pornography, that goes for gambling, that goes for alcohol use and marijuana use and cocaine use.
Thank you very much, Pastor Clive Dottin. Thank
Man,
you very much.
a privilege. I saw your boy Damien, he's in St. Louis, Missouri with me.
Okay, all right.
Thank you so
God
very much
bless.
for joining us.
Yes, thank you very much, and you have a wonderful day, sir.
Thank you so much. God bless. God bless.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Pastor Clive Dottin, a former member of the Police Service Commission, and giving his more than 2 cents on the drinking, gambling, and marijuana use age increase proposed by the Prime Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to go for a break, but when we come back on the other side, Marcus Daniel will be here with his sports segment. So do us a favor, share the live, share the live, share the live. We'll be right back after these messages.